let's talk about communication. I think it's a good topic. I mean, we talk about, anytime we have an issue, we didn't communicate, or our communication was not enough, or in some cases our communication was too much to be able to get something done and lead the team properly. But I'd like to just open the floor up and let's talk about what communication means and what we mean as the leadership team here on what we really expect, but what it means.
Yeah, what it means and also why it's important. I mean, because it is. To your point, I mean, I think a lot of the issues we have, I'd venture to say 80 to 85% of the issues we encounter as a team, in some form or fashion, it leads to a breakdown in communication, a lack of communication, or sometimes partial info communication, which gets people confused, off track, whatnot, and I think it's key and it's crucial. Going back to being the best is the communication's got to be the best too.
And the communication has had to change. I mean, you remember the days where you could communicate. Everybody knew what was going on because you saw each other. You passed each other in the hallways.
Right.
Yeah.
And
There
now
was 100
communication
of us,
with
not
800 people,
Yeah.
it's harder.
Well, and not to mention, that's a good point, but a lot of that wasn't that you saw those people. You had long relationships with those individuals, so you knew how they ticked. I mean, someone would work with me and they would know that, well, Brian's not going to give me all the details, so I've got to go find it.
Yeah.
Just so you knew what was going on, so it made it seamless. It made, especially from the inside world and outside world, we were communicating very well. But as we expanded and the knowledge changed and people started working together that didn't know people very long, and the relationships were not there, that's really where you started seeing the downfall. When we say, well, you didn't communicate, it wasn't clear, or it was too much, wasn't simple, so people to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a very important piece, and it has been somewhat of a challenge with the growth to get everybody, communicate in the way they need to. I think some people, have a hard time recognizing who all they need to communicate with because there's so many different moving pieces. But it is extremely important that everybody knows what's going on, and you are as transparent as possible with everybody about what the plan is. Regardless of what you're doing, there should always be some type of plan in place to make sure that everyone knows what the overall goal is to accomplish the task. So,
well, you bring up a good point there, Tim. I mean, and a lot of times what happens is because of our size, we created protocols.
Right.
We created communication protocols. We created group emails and how we request for certain things within the business. And when we fail, it's when someone says, okay, well, if let's say a machine breaks down, we have an group email called eq@hoopagrading.com. They're supposed to EQ in what the asset number, what they feel is wrong with the machine, how bad it's impacting the job, to EQ. That doesn't mean you pick up the phone and call someone to say, hey, I got an issue with my machine. Can you get a mechanic out here? Again, that's disrespectful. Core values is still up here on the screen because he may have 50 of them in line. But what's supposed to happen with that communication, and this is where we've got to work on some of these things, and this is not just with EQ. So this is just an example. You EQ something in, that team says, okay, they acknowledge that, okay, I acknowledge that I'm in receipt of your issue. And then someone should be coming back with, okay, this is the plan to take care of your issue or to schedule your work. And then whoever's going to do the work would pick up that communication at that point and say, I'm on my way. I'm on the job. I've assessed it. It's a hydraulic hose. I've got to go and get a fitting. I'll be back shortly. And then when they fix that machine, they should close that loop and say, hydraulic hose has been repaired. Machine is operational again. Have a great day.
Yeah.
It takes all that. And it's not just that we're tracking what someone's doing. We're doing that so that the entire team understands what's going on, so that in the event that's a 2-day repair, a 3-day repair, a 4-day repair, the senior superintendent that has access to other resources can help mitigate those issues. And it's the same thing with our fine grading, the same thing with our earthworks, same thing with our pre-con groups, our survey groups. We should have an open line of communication, what we're doing, and then that communication should always be closed.
Yeah.
Someone should close that loop. Should never just leave it open.
Well, that repair can impact so many other tasks that are already scheduled by other resource groups too. It also may impact things that the client has lined up, so it's very important that the whole team understands what those impacts are, and they can be communicated to the other teams so that adjustments can be made to, to adjust the schedule or figure out how we keep things on track and keep things moving.
Yeah.
And I think that's
absolutely.
that's the biggest value of the groups, is that not everybody on those groups. I get group emails. Y'all all get group emails, and we're not necessarily responding all day, but each of us are making decisions based off what we're seeing. And so just knowing that piece of equipment's down, or knowing that there's an issue on this job site or with this team member, like that's impacting the decisions that you're having to make throughout the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing with communication too, that and we're training our leaders to do this, but it's not just leaders. I mean, you see this with the operators and the laborers in the field is you have to communicate. You got to have crucial conversations sometimes, and you can't be scared to have those conversations. I mean, use your values, sit someone down and talk about what you may not like about a situation or what you're seeing could be improved upon. And that goes from a superintendent talking to a dozer operator, but it also goes with a dozer operator to talk to a superintendent. I mean, we're one team. Our leadership we're servant leaders. We're here to serve, those individuals. So it's okay for our operators and laborers and folks that sometimes I think people get the titles all mixed up that, I got to be careful what I'm going to say. No, it's okay for you to communicate. We want you communicating, to leadership.
Up the chain.
Up
Yes.
and down the
down
chain. I mean, that information should flow. And the only way you do that is with solid communication, but concise, simple. And that right there is how you get it done.
That communicating up the chain has been, I think that's been a change for us as a company too, because I think the mindset was await communication from the top. Your orders are going to come down, and then that's the information you need to go and do it. But the information's got to come back the other way, and people feeling empowered to do that, and feeling supported to do that, and knowing that Grayson can't make the decisions he's got to make if he doesn't have all the information.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's important to remember you may need to take a little bit of extra time and explain the why behind it. To Tim's point, the domino effect of, well, if we don't get this excavator fixed and they don't get the pipe in the ground, and we can't get stone base down or curb, whatever it may be, it's a domino effect. And I think sometimes, especially to your point, I think this week I remember seeing an email come across where EQ had 65 machines on the list to look at. I mean, they're swamped, they're covered up, but I think it's sometimes if you take just a little bit more time to explain the why behind it, it would help that piece of the team prioritize and execute on which repairs to go to first, and it just keeps everything flowing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the leading up the chain and the empowerment that you talked about with the employees being able to talk, to a superintendent or whatever, they should feel comfortable being able to go and bring up an issue to their supervisor. It's, I think that makes the employees happier, and it helps, us retain employees, because they feel like if there is an issue, they've got somebody they can go and discuss it with and work things out. A lot of times, if people aren't able to have that open communication, there's just some tension and things that keep building and building. And eventually, that employee gets frustrated and leaves if they don't feel like they can have that open communication. So I think that's extremely important.
And I think too that closing the loop, what you just said, where employees get frustrated. I've had a lot of issues end up on my desk when, honestly, had an individual that was asked a question stop taking the time to gather info, make a decision, and go back to that employee and tell them the why behind it. This is the decision. this is the why behind it. I'm sorry it might not be what you wanted to hear, but just to Brian's point, an honest, crucial conversation. But I think sometimes that doesn't get done, then you get disgruntled employees that feel like they're being ignored. And I think it's very important that we as a team, no matter what position, what your title is, we have that communication flowing up and down and laterally and everything else, and it'll make us better.
Well, and the other thing that happens with a lot of communication is you may hear what you thought you heard and go forward and do what you thought you heard, but it wasn't what that individual was talking about. And so one way to kind of fix that, and we've learned this from, the laws of combat, our boot camp that we did with extreme ownership is, the way they do it in the military is there's a readback. So if you're ever with someone and someone says, hey, I need you to ride a road and pick up a truck, well, make sure you read back and say, well, you want me to ride a road and pick up a truck. Well, what kind of truck is that? Maybe what truck number is it? So that you understand exactly what it is and it's concise. And we make a lot of mistakes in this company, and those mistakes end up getting people mad at each other.
Yes.
We break our core values, and then things end up on Grayson's desk or my desk because so-and-so told me to do it, and he said that's not what he meant after I've done it. Well, the way to fix that is again, it's leading up and down the chain. You take just as much ownership as the one receiving the message as, hey, if he didn't give you the what and why, you ask for the what and why behind it so that you understand exactly what you should be doing and you give that read back.
Mm-hmm.
I agree 100%. I think if, that as a leader, you should try to give as much information as you can when you're asking someone to do something or perform a certain task. Try to be as clear and give them that what and why. But if that person's not getting that information, I think it's very important for them to feel open and ask the question and understand why we're doing it. There should be a plan and a reason why we're doing everything. If we're out there trying to build a job and there's, a sewer line we need to get in the ground, but the superintendent thinks the storm drain needs to go in, they need to have that conversation and understand why it's more important to get the storm drain in and work out the plan so that we can stay on track.
Well, we tell people all the time that, we're here for Tim. Tim has direct line of communication with the customers. I mean, he's kind of like, Commissioner Batman and the bat phone. So when something happens, the client calls the bat phone and they call him.
It's in Tim's office.
It's Tim's office. But a lot of times when we're into those jams, we've gone way too long with the communication, or a customer didn't. It's been communicated. It was a lot of "I told you so" and so forth. But sometimes that crucial conversation is not had. It's like, well, look, this is where we really are, because it ends up when it gets to Tim's desk, customer may think we're falling behind on the schedule. Project manager may have told them, look, this is where we are with weather and materials and so forth, but it ends up becoming a 911. Well, then we communicate down chain to everybody that's going to go out there and get the work, and they see it's a 911. Well, what's the perception in their eyes? It's like, well, why are we always cleaning up someone's mess?
Yeah.
And it may not be someone's mess. It may very well be that what was communicated was heard but not understood well enough by the customer. And so sometimes you've got to give that read back, meaning, hey, we're going to be delayed, just so you know that the schedule's 30 days behind because of this, and this. You've got it out there in an email. You talked about it. They've got the revised schedule. But yet you go back to them and say, look, do you understand that? So when you call me in June, because that was the original schedule, is asphalt and curb going down, no, it ain't June anymore. It's July. That's where we're at. And if you do that, it'll thwart off a lot of those issues that we have that ends up trickling down to the team. And it's the perception of the customer that we're not being the best because it's what he thought at that time. It's what he heard.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you always say it's what he wanted to, it's what he wanted, not what he wanted to hear. So it kind of went in one ear and out the other, but that's not necessarily always the case. I mean, I've found with customers that over the years that if I communicate that thoroughly and then give that read back, and whether it's good news or bad, they're very accepting of the situation because there's not a whole lot you can do about it at this point.
Yeah,
it is our job to kind of reel it back in to help them solve the problems that may be created by us or created by others, but at the end of the day, if you communicate, it means so much more. Good news or bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very important. Communicate the bad too.
Yeah.
And those processes, it is a lot of processes that have been implemented to streamline communication. But every one of those processes were implemented because communication broke down.
Yeah.
And something
Absolutely.
failed. And
Yeah.
so that's why we've had to come back and do it. And I think you said this in the very beginning. It's really about taking some time.
Yeah.
Like, these processes weren't implemented to slow you down. They were implemented to keep somebody
Slow down, to
safe,
speed up.
to keep a job on track, to keep a client happy. There were reasons why they were done, but it just requires slowing down to make sure that you close the loop on everything.
Followed up.
Absolutely. We summed up communication. That was good.
Yeah. Can you give me a read back on all that?
Make sure that you open and close the loop
Yeah.
with whomever it may be.
Be respectful while you're doing
Yeah.
it.
There it is.
And adhere to the core values and know that problems are opportunities to be better along the way. Just communicate that.
Does Christy ever trip you up with a read back?
She tries to sometimes, but
Elizabeth-
she trips me up.
She'll say, "Do you hear what I just said?" No.
Typically what she says is you're not listening to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It happens.
Or 2 days later is, well, I told you about that.
All right. Communication.